Hello there, welcome back. Today, with the holiday season quickly approaching and families getting ready to get together and have a good meal together, I thought I'd show you how to make what I would consider a bit of a staple, mashed potatoes, but with a little bit of a twist to help elevate it to impress your guest. And I'm going to show you how to do it. And for your convenience, here's the ingredients. So mashed potatoes are one of those things that you see at pretty much every dinner table around the holidays. But what I've heard or seen from a lot of holiday events is the mashed potatoes aren't really that much of a star of the show. And I think that's unfair for the mighty potato. As long as you add a little technique and a little bit of love, you can make your mashed potatoes almost the star of the plate. There's no reason for the mashed potatoes to just be a bland thing on the side of your plate. So I'm going to show you how to make a little bit more of a gourmet potato for your event. And I figure if I show you now, you'll have plenty of time to perfect the recipe, so when that holiday dinner comes, you'll be ready to go and impress everyone around. But enough with all the banter, let's get into the prep. And to get this all started, you're going to need some kind of peeler. I don't have a potato peeler, turns out, so I'm just going to use a paring knife and be really careful not to hurt myself. About 3 pounds of Yukon potatoes, some kind of bowl to give them a quick wash and get some of the starch off, and a large pot to boil them in. I've already washed my potatoes, so I don't need to worry about that, but make sure to give them a little bit of a wash so you can get any of the little knobs off and some of that dirt off so you don't end up with a grimy, gritty potato. And since I don't have a potato peeler, I'm just going to use a paring knife and very carefully de-skin my potatoes. I don't really know what you could use these extra potato skins for. You could maybe fry them as like a little topper for something. I've never tried it myself, but I might this year, who knows. This would have been a lot faster if I had had a potato peeler. I'll have to remember for next time to get one. One of the reasons I'm using a Yukon potato is because they have the least starch of any of the potatoes. If you use a red potato, it's going to be a little bit thickier and gummier, and then if you use russet potatoes, it's going to end up kind of like a potato glue, which is not really that great when you're trying to eat it and have light and fluffy mashed potatoes. And if you've never used Yukon potatoes or gold potatoes for your mashed potatoes, this might be a good time to try. And I'm realizing now, I'm going to be saying potato a lot in this video, so I apologize in advance. I'll try and change it up, but I can't really avoid saying potato over and over again, being as how these are mashed potatoes. Potato. I just feel like nobody really gives their mashed potatoes the love they deserve. Just because it's a lonely potato doesn't mean it doesn't deserve some respect and love. Everybody deserves love and respect. Alright, the potatoes are peeled now. I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of these skins because I don't exactly know what to do with them yet. I might come up with a recipe later on for it, but for now, we're just going to get rid of them. Or you could compost them, I guess. I want my potatoes to cook evenly, so I'm going to try and cut some of these larger potatoes into more of the size of the smaller ones so that they're all done at the same time. Once I've cut my potatoes, I'm going to go ahead and put them in some cold water to help remove some of the starches from the potatoes so I can end up with an even creamier, tastier mashed potatoes. And this doesn't have to be perfect, just like everything else on this channel, just do your best. Good enough is good for me. Go ahead and give these a little mix. Try and get some of the starches off there. There won't be a lot because Yukons don't have a lot of starch, but everything counts so we can get that creamy, nice mashed potato. I've gone ahead and put them in a large pot with about an inch or two of water above where the highest potato is. Now you're going to want to add a liberal amount of salt to this water. I'm using kosher salt. If you're using sea salt, you're going to need just a little bit less because sea salt is wildly salty. And we're just going to set this aside and move on to the next step. So for the next step, I want to make a bouquet garni to simmer in my heavy cream. And to do that, I'm going to take some sage, chives, thyme, and rosemary and make a little bundle, which I'll show you how to do. I'm going to use a little bit of butcher's twine, which we're going to be using later on in videos, so if you don't have any, it would be worth getting. And set that down on my cutting board, and take a good bit of thyme, a nice sprig of rosemary, a little bundle of chives, and a few sage leaves, and put them all together. And then all I want to do is take my twine and wrap it around my herbs until I have a little bundle and tie that together. And now we have a little bundle of herbs that we can put into our heavy cream as it's steaming to give it some flavor. So we'll set this to the side and move on. So I've got a couple cloves of garlic so I can infuse them into my butter similar to what we're doing with the herbs in the heavy cream. And if you're one of those people that sees 2 cloves of garlic in a recipe and uses like 9 like a crazy person, And I'm one of those people too. I'm telling you, you're not going to need that much garlic for this recipe. It's just going to end up tasting like garlic at the end if you do that. And I'm just going to give the garlic that quick smash so that I can fish it out of the butter later. So this is already ready to go. Now get yourself a large saucepan and a small saucepan so that we can do our heavy cream and our herbs and our butter and garlic. I'm going to start with a pint of heavy cream. That might be too much, I don't think so, but we'll see. And 4 tablespoons of butter. So now all I need to do is add the heavy cream to my large saucepan and my butter to this little guy, and I'll see you over at the stove for the cook. So now all we need to do is turn our potatoes to a high heat, and once they start to boil, we can reduce it down and cover it, and they're going to boil for 15 to 20 minutes, maybe 25, depending on how hot your range is. And at the same time, we're going to take our heavy cream and put it on a medium heat, and then put your butter on a medium low. And then I'm going to set my garlic on top of my butter, so as soon as it's melted, the garlic can start cooking in. Now this is just a little bit extra. You can just wait for the butter to melt and then add your garlic. It's not a big deal. I'm just going to do it this way because it's a little more fun. And then I'm going to take my bouquet garni or herb bundle if you don't want to be so fancy and add that to my heavy cream and just let it kind of mix in a little bit. And now we just have to wait for it all to come up to temperature. And this hurry up and wait bit that's going on right now would be your opportunity during a big holiday meal to go work on or focus on other things. Because most of this, as long as you just come back and check it periodically, is going to be fine. And a couple things to keep in mind with the heavy cream is if you let it sit too long, it's going to get a film on top, so you want to stir it occasionally, which we're going to need the help of Batchy Boy in that endeavor, just to keep things moving around so we don't end up with a bit of a skin on top of the milk. As gross as that sounds, you don't want that. And also with the heavy cream, you just want to keep it at a light simmer. And if it starts to foam instead of simmer, it's too hot and you need to reduce the heat just a little bit, just so that it's at a light simmer, which you'll see here in a minute. This is also a batch size for about 2 or 3 people, maybe 4 depending on the appetite. So you might want to double or triple this for a big family gathering. You won't need much more of the bouquet garni, that's about big enough for any amount of heavy cream. I'm being a little extra with it if I'm being honest. And the garlic, you want to scale about 1 clove of garlic for every 2 tablespoons of butter. I don't know if you can see this foam, but that means it's too hot, so I'm going to reduce the heat some. And once my butter's melted, I'm going to go ahead and cover it so that I don't lose any moisture out of it. So it's been about 4 or 5 minutes. My potatoes are starting to boil, so I'm going to reduce them from a high heat down to a medium high heat, cover them, and let them boil for that 15 or 20 minutes. And we basically want the potatoes at a consistency where you can stick a fork in them and pull it out without any resistance. But anyway, that's about all the information you need over here. Just keep in mind what we just talked about and keep an eye on it and be sure to give it some love. But with all that, I'll meet you back at the cutting board for the assembly of these delicious mashed potatoes. Alright, so my potatoes are almost done, so I'm going to get my heavy cream and my garlic ready. All I need to do is pull my herb bundle out of the heavy cream and set that aside to be tossed, and then try and pick out some of these little bits that fell out. There's always going to be little bits of rosemary or something that comes off. So just do your best, it doesn't have to be perfect. And if you want it to be more perfect, you can just run it through a fine mesh strainer, and that should get all the little bits of stuff in there and kind of clean it up. But I'm not too worried about that. And the same thing for the garlic. Just pick out as much of those pieces of garlic as you can, because the flavors are infused into the butter, and we don't actually need hunks of garlic in our mashed potatoes. You can leave them in if you want though, it's not a huge deal. And we'll just set these aside and get ready for final assembly. Alright, I may have lied a little bit. I don't want all of that in my mashed potatoes, so I am going to run it through a strainer. So I've strained my potatoes, they're in the sink now. I'm just going to give my pot a quick wipe, let it cool down just a little bit, and then add them back to the pot so we can mix it all together and have our final assembly. And they're going to be pretty hot, so be careful. But they do come on and off the fork pretty easy. And if you're really trying to impress your guests, for this next part, you might want to get a potato ricer. I don't have one, because I don't make potatoes that often, but a potato ricer is going to force them through really small holes and make them super creamy so you don't end up with little lumps. But I'm just going to use a potato masher, because I'm not trying to go that far with it. We'll go ahead and add a little salt to our potatoes, just a little bit, just a little bit. You can add more later if you need it. A splash of our butter, and a good portion of our heavy cream. and then gently give them a mash. Now the more you work your potatoes, the less creamy they're going to be, and the starches start to try and turn into glue, and you end up with very thick, sticky potatoes, which I don't want. So I'm just going to kind of gently combine everything, little by little, doing my best to do more folding than I am mashing. Again, if you had a potato ricer, this would be a little bit easier, but I'm working with what I got. They're still a little thick, so I'm going to add the rest of my butter and almost all of my heavy cream. And then go ahead and combine the rest of that together, and you should be pretty good to go. This would also be a good time to add cheese if you wanted cheesy potatoes. But I think I'm just going to let mine be a little au naturel. Get some of that onto a plate. And I want it to look extra nice for the thumbnail, so I'm just going to cut up some chives to go over the top of it. And there you are. But the real question is, what do they taste like? Creamy, buttery, you get a little bit of the garlic in there, and just the faintest flavors of thyme and rosemary, sage and chive. It's not enough that it's overpowering the potato, but it's enough that it's on the back end, really enhancing it. Which is why I think this makes for an easy, delicious recipe for the holidays. But as I like to say, if it's bad for the heart, it's good for the soul. I'll see you in the next one. Hello there. You're still here, once again. These little end bits at the last part of the videos have kind of turned into a little bit of a talking session between us. I figure if you've made it this far, you don't mind if I just talk for a little bit. Thank you again to everybody who's here. If you're new, welcome. And if you're subscribed, thanks for coming back. I thought I'd shamelessly plug my Patreon for you. It's $1 a month, and it'd really help the channel. You may or may not know that I don't get paid for any of this. It all just comes from my passion for cooking and my eagerness to get other people interested in cooking. The Patreon's only $1 a month. I have it linked down there. I'll be honest, Patreon's a little confusing to use, but if you feel like supporting the channel, I figured I wouldn't deny you the option, so it's there if you want it. And if not, I completely understand. I will be having polls on there for recipes, so you can kind of be more involved in the channel if you want, and that'll be how I decide from time to time what I'm actually making, which I think will be fun going into the holidays, seeing as how there's so many different things you can make for the holidays, and who am I to decide what's the most important. But anyway, I thought I'd just stop by and say hello and say thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.